Welcome to INFS 321 Information Sources. In session 10, we continue our lecture on bibliographies. This time we'll be looking at indexes and abstracts. So at the end of the session, I expect that you'll be able to explain what indexes and abstracts are. We'll also be able to state the usefulness of indexes and abstracts. And then we'll look at the criteria for evaluation of indexes and abstracts. So what are indexes? The simple definitions include they are systematic listings of works that tell where information can be located. And I believe this is the definition which you are very familiar with, the systematic guide to the text of any reading material or to the contents of the other collected documentary material comprising a series of entries with headings arranged in alphabetical or chosen order and with a reference to show where each item is indexed. This is a typical definition for a book index. When you have a book, at the end of the book, we have what you call an index. It lists either terms or important words and provides the reference numbers or pages. And so when you're going to consult that book, you just refer to that particular page number which has been listed in the index for reference. Uses of indexes. Apart from book indexes, we have what we call periodical indexes, newspaper indexes, pamphlet indexes. There are several types of indexes. Now, for newspapers and periodicals, the usefulness of indexes is to help them dissect exactly what is found within that particular newspaper or within that particular index, that particular periodical. Note that we said a library catalog lists materials, but the library catalog will not list individual materials found in the periodical or the newspaper. That assignment, that work, that publication goes into what we call a periodical index or a newspaper index. And they are used to find research topics of current interest. So when a researcher is trying to publish in a particular area, he uses an index to find out what has been published. He refers to it. So it helps the researcher get an understanding of what the current debate is, and then also to be able to add to growing knowledge. As I mentioned earlier, the indexer has a little advantage over the library catalog because it provides more fully the content of the library's collection. That means the periodical index will list specific articles and their page numbers for you to see what is in there. Now, the indexes also list subjects which are not yet written about in books. The different types of indexes which I mentioned earlier include indexes to collections, periodical indexes I mentioned earlier, newspaper indexes, pamphlet indexes, book indexes. There are several of them. Our focus is going to be on periodical index. So what is a periodical index? A periodical index lists authors, titles, or subjects of publications without any comment, without any annotation. Now, periodical and newspaper indexes are usually referred to as serials. And we describe a serial as a publication issued in successive parts, usually at regular intervals, and as a rule intended to be continued indefinitely. An example of a serial is a journal. Now, a journal which commences is intended to come out either monthly or bi-monthly, and it is hoped that the journal will not die immediately after it is published. There are a few journals who have died that way, but generally it's intended to be continued indefinitely. I've been mentioning periodicals and periodical indexes, and what are they? They are also serials. They are publications with its own distinctive title, containing a mix of articles by more than one contributor, issued at regular stated intervals of less than a year, without prior decision as to when the final issue will appear. And so for this particular definition, we usually exclude conference proceedings. Conference proceedings usually do not occur less than a year. Usually a year, 2 years, we'll have the proceedings out. So you would not define conference proceedings as part of periodicals. Periodicals will include magazines, it would include journals, but not conference proceedings. An example of an important periodical index which will be examined is the Ulrich's International Periodical Directory. So I'm going to ask you again, refer to your study guide and look for the format for studying the Ulrich's Periodical International Directory. Now we'll move on from indexes and look at abstracts. We put the two of them together because they more or less go together. So what are abstracts? Abstracts are concise and accurate summary of the essential contents of a document. They condense and present information succinctly, giving us the objectives, the scope, the findings of the document. Some people also describe it as the terse presentation of all the points made in the original piece of primary documentary information. And they are used because they provide adequate bibliographic information. They enable us to be able to retrieve whatever information that we are looking for. In abstracts, the information is usually conveyed together with an indexing system, and that is why we treat indexes and abstracts together. The index provides you with the bibliographic information or the bibliographic citation plus the page references. And the abstract gives you a summary of the particular article which you have listed. So the abstracts present the skeletal representation of the original document, thereby serving as a true surrogate of the document. And as a true surrogate, we might not need to see the original document. Because the abstract is detailed, we are able to determine whether this particular document is what I am looking for, or this particular document will assist me with my research. So let's look at uses of abstracts. It serves as a substitute for the document. We said as a surrogate, so it saves you time. Whenever any researcher is undertaking any work, he does not consult just one book. He consults a number of journal articles. Now, he will save time by reading the abstract and deciding whether those journals are relevant for the work. If he had to read the detailed article, he will spend all his time reading articles and never get to start his work. So the abstracts serve a very, very useful substitute for the documents that the researchers need to review. Abstracts are also used for current awareness services, especially for researchers. So the abstracts are sent to them, they just read the abstracts and know that these are the documents I need, these ones are not the ones I need. And also to overcome the language barrier. Usually, articles in foreign language always have English abstracts. They do a translation of the abstract in English for you to determine whether you need that publication or not. Abstracts are also used to determine whether there's a need to translate the original document. If a document happens to be in Chinese and you have the abstract in English and you think the abstract is exactly what you would need that particular document for, then you request the translation of that particular document. Now let's look at the types of abstracts. We have informative abstracts and we have indicative abstracts. Let's look at informative. Informative abstract is the type of abstract that you'll be using when you start writing your dissertations and your thesis. The informative abstract captures all the essential points in the original document. So what kinds of points are we talking about? It should give you what is the purpose of that article, what is the scope of that article, what is the methodology of that article, what are a few findings and the conclusions and recommendations. And so the informative abstract should usually be between 200 and 500 words. Then we have indicative abstracts. These ones just provide an indication of the original document. Sometimes it's called a descriptive abstract. And these ones don't need to provide all the detailed information as we saw in the informative abstract. And they usually apply to non-research papers. So if it's a non-research paper, you can use this type of abstract. And it will hardly provide the actual content. And so it cannot be used in place of the original document. But it tells the user where the article can be found rather than the actual data and information contained in the article. Now, we have looked at indexes and abstracts. We need to look at how indexes and abstracts can be searched for the information to be obtained. And note, these indexes and abstracts are not only print materials, but they also happen to be in online materials. So in searching indexes and abstracts, one important thing you have to look out for is the subject heading. They provide the heading and they provide other indexes or other what we call index terms for you to be able to find the information you are looking for. So the indexer provides a subject heading, and then he provides a number of terms so that when somebody is looking for information, he can get at least one of those terms to use. Most indexers are aware that we speak naturally, and so a natural language term is what you will use to search the index. So a good indexer will provide a reference from the natural language term to the term that the indexer prefers, or the term that the indexer has used in his indexing periodical. There are two types of subject headings which can be consulted to compile your index. We have what we call the Library of Congress subject heading for big libraries, and then we have the CS list of subject headings for smaller libraries. We also have what we call a thesaurus for you to be able to compile your index terms. A thesaurus lists usually similar terms. So it's similar to a subject heading, but it's a list of terms used for indexing and for showing relative or to showing relationships. It shows you similar or synonyms which can be used in place of the terms that is found in the index. Now let's look at the selection and evaluation of indexes and abstracts. You know, for the selection process, these materials are very expensive, and so you need to be careful when you are selecting the materials for your collection. One important evaluation is the format. Now, indexes and abstracts now exist in machine readable form. They are online, and so when you are looking for an index, you would probably go for an online index because of the capabilities of searching. It has several access points, and as I mentioned, access points, you should be thinking of the author, the title, the place of publication, the publisher. So if it is an online index, you have several ways in which you'll be able to search the index. And you also be able to search the index using what I call the Boolean logic. Shortly, we're going to examine what we mean by the Boolean logic. The scope of the index is also very important. Authority and the accuracy of the index in evaluating the index. For your activity, I will ask you to visit again any library of your choice and examine the Ulrich's International Periodical Directory. If you do that, you'll be able to understand what you mean by an index. I thank you for paying attention to me.